Hello listeners, my name is Jarvis Cocker and I'm here to tell you, you're listening to Light in the Attic. Stay mellow.
Hello, this is Matt Sullivan with the Light in the Attic podcast. This is episode number 16. Thanks for joining us today. We recently were in London, England and sat down with Jarvis Cocker for a chat about music, what he's been listening to lately and other things. For those who aren't familiar with Jarvis, Jarvis was the lead singer of the band Pulp out of Sheffield, England since about 1983. They released about 7 albums. He has a solo career, many albums, including a recent album with Chili Gonzalez called Room 29. And he's acted in a number of movies, including Harry Potter and Wes Anderson's Fantastic Mr. Fox, and a number of other things. But he's also someone that we've been a fan of for a number of years, including his radio show, or former radio show on BBC Radio 6 called Sunday Service. And Jarvis had a unique style of playing all types of music, but also shining a light on elements of history and birthdays and strange anniversaries. And we were fortunate to sit down with him, which meant a lot. And he shared some knowledge. So thanks to Jarvis, Jeanette Lee, and the Brunswick House, where we recorded this podcast, for their time. So here is Jarvis Cocker. I'm gonna lay here all right. All right. This is Matt Sullivan with Light in the Attic, and I'm sitting here with Jarvis Cocker for the latest edition of the Light in the Attic podcast.
We're almost in an attic.
Yes, that's true. Where are we?
Well, we're in a place called Brunswick House in London. And there are chandeliers in the attic here.
For sale.
Yeah.
Yeah, hundreds of them. As well as giant pairs of scissors.
Yeah.
That cost you 980 pounds. So you're Jarvis, and one thing I wanted to say, and I said earlier before we started recording, was how much I admired and loved your BBC Sunday Service radio show.
That's very kind of you to say.
It's true. And it introduced me, as I was saying as well earlier, to many records and artists that I was not familiar with. One I was going to bring up, which I went out and found the record soon after you played it, was that Eric Satie, Velvet Gentleman.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's a great record, that one.
Yeah. I don't know the story of it, but they're just beautiful. Also the name.
Yeah, and you can't get that. I mean, for some reason that record's never been reissued, and I don't really understand why.
I don't know. Yeah.
Because it's, Blood, Sweat and Tears did a version of Eric Satie, So there's lots of people have tried to play that music, but I think that, for me, that's the best kind of modern version of it, It's one of those records if you really want to drift away somewhere, it'll do it. And then it kind of goes kind of strange. Actually, the way that I bought that record, I didn't buy it for that at all. I was in some shop and I kind of picked a record out, and I used to kind of collect Moog records, like Moog versions of the hits of today and stuff like that. I used to quite enjoy those. And I picked one out in this shop, and the guy said, "Oh, that's not very good, that record. If you want a Moog record, you should have a look at this one." And he got the Camerata Velvet Gentleman record out, and he said, "This is really good, this record." And I'm kind of bull-headed in a way. I don't like to take advice in record shops a lot of time, which is stupid, because obviously the person is in the shop, and that's the good thing about shops, is that it reflects the owner's personality. So you should submit slightly when you go in there.
If you like their personality.
Yeah. Now I like every record shop's personality, because there aren't that many left.
Yes.
So anyway, he kind of sold me that record, and I was expecting some kind of groovy kind of thing, and so I was kind of taken aback when I heard it, and later on in the record you do get this kind of I think it's quite good, because it's quite an old record, but the way that the electronic elements are blended with the kind of more traditional orchestral instruments is really interesting.
Yeah.
You know, it's not cheesy at all. It's actually
Well, it's a beautiful record.
Yeah, good record,
The cover,
yeah.
I love the album cover too. It's also a record, for those listening, is not very hard to find if you just go online. But that's
yeah,
not,
I think.
not as
I
fun.
mean, they
but
did
yes.
another couple of records as well. There's one called Through the Looking Glass, and then there's one called something like The Electronic Spirit of Eric Satie or something. And
I haven't heard those ones.
okay,
Yeah.
they're worth
Yeah.
searching out as well. But the first one is the best. As usual, the first one's the best one. That applies to everyone, doesn't it? You know, but
Unfortunately, it's true sometimes, but there's nothing more annoying than hearing that. And feel like I say that probably once or twice a day. I was just go back to kind of record stores and that whole world. Do you still find yourself going to record stores a lot?
yeah, I do, and I've tried to learn to because a lot of the record stores that I loved have disappeared. I now take more notice of the people in the record store.
Yeah.
There used to be a great one on Hanway Street in London, and I got a lot of records that I ended up playing on the Sunday service from there, because this guy kind of got, even though I was I'm not the kind of person who will engage the owner of the shop in a long conversation, but I guess he just kind of got used to me coming in the shop. And the shop was never that popular, so he would kind of put something on to kind of reel me in. So, you know, I'd be browsing in some other part of the shop, and then I'd hear a song, and think, oh, that sounds interesting. And so then I'd go and ask him what it was. And over the years, we kind of evolved that thing that it was an unspoken thing that as soon as I was in, then he'd put something on, and like kind of 9 times out of 10, he'd hook me first time, and I'd have to run to the counter and say, what's that?
What was the name of the store?
What was it called? It's gone now. I mean, he tried to sell the entire contents of the shop on eBay. It didn't go well.
Yeah.
I can't remember what it was called. It was probably some kind of generic name.
What are stores now in London or Paris or anywhere in the world that some of your favorites?
Let's have a think. Paris, yeah, Paris has got some decent stores. For old records, well, again, this isn't very useful because I can't remember the name of it. But there's one, I think the name of the road is Rue Gerando.
Okay.
And he's got good records. His big gimmick is he shrink wraps everything, which somehow just makes everything look smart.
I don't know if I've ever been to a store where they literally shrink wrap.
Yes, everything's shrink wrapped.
Even though it's used,
So it kind of looks like it's new,
Yeah.
but it isn't.
Yeah.
And he's got a good selection of things. Quite expensive though.
Do you find yourself buying records online, or are you into CDs still, or mostly just vinyl? Or
CDs have completely disappeared for me now.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't like the length of them. We were talking earlier before we started recording that I think that, you know, the 33 RPM record album is like the perfect format for music, that you put it on, you get 20 minutes, 22 minutes of music, which can be one long piece of music, or it can be like 4, 5, 6 songs. And that's like a really good kind of chunk of time to spend sitting there listening to something.
Yeah.
You know, if you want to treat music, which I do find I do want to even more now, as like it's an occasion to sit down and actually actively listen to something. Because the rest of music's going so much in the other way, where you've got a themed playlist, like I'm doing some flower arranging today. You know, what music would go well with my flower arranging, or I'm cooking. I'm cooking a Mexican meal. What playlist could I have in the background?
Yeah.
People are using music much more in that kind of scented candle way of it, more of an environmental idea of music, which is all right, you know. But
much different.
There are other times when you actually want to sit there and get your mind blown, you know, and that's what I like. I like to sit on the couch and go astral travelling with something, you know. Which obviously you couldn't chop up an onion whilst doing that, because it would be really dangerous.
Very dangerous, very dangerous. And when you were doing, you said earlier, I think interesting part of your Sunday service show on the BBC, it was a show Jarvis had for 7 years. Mm-hmm. For those listening who aren't familiar with it, but there's probably some archive shows on YouTube worth checking out. You mentioned you had access to the BBC archive.
Mm.
What were some of those experiences like?
Well, they were kind of horrifying in a certain way. In that I was, it was a bit like that the kid in the candy shop kind of scenario, because I was allowed to go in the archive and look. But what happens to me generally in those situations is that my mind freezes, because you've got this idea everything's here, mm-hmm. all records are here. You just don't know where to start, mm-hmm. So each time that I managed to go to the BBC archive a couple of times, and I also went to the Radio France archive in Paris.
Oh, it's crazy.
And each time that I went, I made sure that I brought some kind of crate diggers with me,
mm-hmm.
People who know what to look for,
yeah.
and would dig out some things and then turn me on to them,
What's those places are like hundreds of thousands of records. I mean, what's the cataloging system? It's got to be...
The Radio France one is the one that people get really like shaky about, because the trouble is the BBC, maybe it's an English thing, they've got this kind of obsession with cataloguing things. Mm-hmm. So, and the BBC have gone through so many different attempts at cataloguing. So when you get one of the records out of the library, you can't even see the sleeve, because first it's in this kind of weird vacuum-packed plastic thing, and it's got this giant barcode on the top of it. Then it'll have an earlier attempt, which is just like more like a library thing, like a piece of card stuck to it, which then somebody would stamp with the mm-hmm. dates it's been out. Mm-hmm. So you're just faced with this weird kind of thing where the actual record is kind of obscured by all the packaging that they've put on to make it fit into the library. The French archive is completely the other way, that they've got this thing of, I don't know how they actually put them on the shelves, but they're all in pristine condition, like from like the day they were pressed mm-hmm. and stuff. So record collectors get more kind of misty-eyed about the idea of the French archive.
You can't check stuff out publicly. I mean, the public, it's...
Yeah, I mean, what used to happen with the show, because that was another thing that I learned from the show, that you've got this kind of idea. It's like the kind of fallacy that everything now exists online, as you will know from getting stuff together for your label. There's loads of stuff that's not digitized and not online. So, and the BBC is the same. That when I first started working there, I thought, well, I've got access to every record ever made, because I had this idea that they would all be there, but mm-hmm. it's not true. There are gaps in there. So sometimes I would order a track or something, and they'd just say, we haven't got that. Other times it was slow as well, so sometimes I'd want to get a track out, but it kind of took, you had to give them like 5 days notice, and I've never been a very good person at forward planning, so I often would miss out in that because of that.
Have you been buying records your whole life since you were a teenager, or like what was the record that kind of gave you a kick in the ass or punched you in the face in some ways?
I bought my first records like lots of kids, I suppose. Like I got a job delivering newspapers and mm-hmm. started to save money up, and so the first album I bought was David Bowie's Changes One Bowie album. Mm-hmm. Then I bought a Stranglers single. But with old records, I suppose I just started with... back in those days, there were still these things called jumble sales, which I guess the nearest thing in America is like a yard sale.
Yeah, garage sales.
Yeah. So basically stuff that people didn't want, they'd give it to a church, mm-hmm. and there would be a thing, and you could buy stuff very cheaply. And so I just used to, if there was a record with a funny sleeve or whatever, I would just buy those, and kind of got into that thing of then with charity shops and thrift store type of thing, and discovering music that way, because it wasn't such a, well, I was poor, so it was a way of being able to be a consumer and still be able to survive as a person as well, you know. So, and I've thought about it quite a lot in the interim, actually, that really, so quite a lot of like the established greats of music, and also with literature and stuff like that, have passed me by, because I was always buying stuff that people had rejected. You know, it was always stuff that people had thrown away.
Yeah.
So the kind of the canon of undisputed classics, which is the stuff that people hold on to, because I'm only kind of discovering that now that I've got the money to be able to actually buy those records and books like that.
And you're referring to in music like Frank Sinatra, or like, what do you mean, like the records that people hold on to, the big canon?
There's just stuff in there, you know. There's like
the Beatles, or like,
well, Beatles I knew because Beatles. My mum had got some Beatles records.
Right.
But you know what I mean? You would, if you were a kid now and your parents didn't have Beatles records, you would never find them in a thrift shop or something. I mean, if they were in a second-hand place, you'd be paying a fortune for them now. You know, so it wouldn't be available to you.
Right.
And that's a shame, you know, because the Beatles get written about too much or whatever, but you know, for me they were kind of like they're like the Big Bang, aren't they, that justified and enabled so much else to happen in music. So you kind of have to know about them, you know, otherwise the rest of it in a way doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, their significance is so giant.
Yeah, and you can think that there are artists like that, and like Bowie as well a bit, you know, that again he kind of through his different interests and stuff, kind of gave people the kind of confidence or the idea to go and explore these other things.
Yeah, I mean, last night we went with a friend to see Iggy Pop play at the Finsbury Park show, and thinking, you know, 71 years old, and thinking that I probably would not know Iggy Pop if it wasn't for David Bowie, and then like Train Spotting. So it's like kind of somewhat related to what you were saying. It's just like, it's kind of, maybe this is a little off, but the roots start somewhere, and you know. It's
How
like,
was he
he was good. The sound was really shitty for him. It wasn't like very loud, and like I don't know, it wasn't very good. And but I liked it. The performance was good. The band was good. It wasn't Queens of Stone Age played after, and you know, they did an album together, and they didn't back him up, but his band was really good. It kind of got more dialed in as he went on. It was like a festival the whole day. I think one of the Jewels played before Iggy, but when Queens played, it was like the sound was totally dialed in. But I don't know, maybe it's just a festival thing, or maybe Neighbours. You can't get very loud there. I don't know what it was.
It's was it
Finsbury
in
Park?
Oh, Finsbury Park.
Yeah,
that's right.
yeah. But I was sitting there thinking, this guy's 71 years old. My mom is 76 this year. My dad's 77. It's like, my parents couldn't do that. Not many people could. I mean, it's just, I don't know how he does it, but it is just absolutely incredible. Have you seen him play before?
I have, yeah. There was a concert he did. I had him on when I did the Meltdown Festival back in 2006. I had him on then, and then. But the best time I've seen him was he played at the Hammersmith, what used to be called Hammersmith Odeon. It's called the Apollo now, and that's one of my favourite venues anyway. But that concert had such a. He was playing Raw Power. It was like the anniversary of that.
With James Williamson.
So James Williamson had come back, and there was just some kind of crazy atmosphere. Like the girl who I was dating at the time, she passed out.
Wow. Just some energy at all.
I think, I mean, it was a kind of hot. It was hot as well.
Yeah.
There was just, sometimes you'll go to a show and there's some kind of feeling there, isn't there? And that venue seems to be really good for that. It's, I don't know, something about the layout of it or something, that it's quite a big venue, but somehow you feel very much involved with what's going on.
the Stooges reunions that they did, the one that before when they did the Raw Power and that was amazing. Saw Nick Cave last year, which had kind of a Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds.
Yeah, well, I've still not seen him. He played in Victoria Park just a few weeks ago, and I was supposed to go, but then it was my son's rock school concert, so I had to go to that instead.
That.
So I really want to see him because a lot of people have told me that.
So I saw him in Seattle years ago. Well, I don't know, early 2000s, and I love that show. But now it's like this, like with Warren Ellis and the whole band. It's like it felt like a transcendent, like kind of how you were describing, the Hammersmith show with Iggy Pop. I mean, I was just like, I went back the next night to see it again. It was just like goosebumps the whole time. I think it was my favorite show I've ever seen in my entire life. It was amazing. But yes, that's a side note there. But yeah, you should see him if you get the chance.
I will.
You will. What else was I going to ask you? What are you listening to these days, or like what records are you?
Well, I'm glad you asked me that question, and I'm not consulting my phone at all. It's just that when I'm asked questions like that, my mind always goes blank. So I just tried to think of stuff that I've listened to in the last couple of weeks, starting with new things. So I saw a group called Horse Lords, who I think maybe they're from Chicago, but maybe not. I saw them. I've seen a clip of them performing on some show called Chirp Radio or something like that.
Okay.
Where they have like live sessions, and it's filmed in Chicago. So
Yeah,
they're interesting. It's kind of like they've moved all the frets on their guitars so that they can play in just intonation. So. But then it's so usually music that's like just intonation, like Terry Riley or someone like that, is quite drony and spacey. But they've got a drummer and a sax player, and there's no singing in it. But it sounds a little bit like African music in some aspects, and they kind of get into these little riffs that'll last for 10.5 bars, and then they'll go on to another one, and it's quite primal music. I saw them play as well in Paris just a few weeks ago, and they're pretty good. So I listened to that. I think
that sounds cool.
Yeah.
What label is that on?
Good question, and I wish I knew what it was. But Horse Lords.
Maybe Drag City, Chicago.
No, it's not. It's not as.
No.
I don't think it's as well known a label as that. And then there's a group called Bass Yan. The main kind of songwriter in that group is a woman called Serafina Steer, and I produced a record by her a few years ago. And she's now got a group with 2 other women, and she just gave me a copy of the record the other week. But that's good. That's like... well, the thing that I've always liked about her songs are that they're recognisable as songs, but structurally they're always quite strange, that they don't. I'm very traditional when I construct a song. It's like 4 times through something, that's the verse. 2 times through something, that's the chorus. Another 4 times through something, that's the middle 8. It's kind of. I guess it's because I was brought up listening to pop radio. It's just that template is kind of laser etched into my consciousness.
Yeah.
She was trained as a classical harpist, so I think for that reason maybe she's got a more open-ended view to constructing music, and I like the fact that it's got that, but it also is recognisable as what you might say is pop music. So that's a good record. The record is called Yes I Jan.
Okay.
And I think that's on Lost Map.
Right.
And then I've been lucky enough to be given an advance copy of Chili Gonzalez's new album, Solo Piano 3. You might be able to guess it's his 3rd solo piano record. And I'm just...
Sounds nice.
Yeah, that's really... Because that was how I kind of... Well, I did know about Gonzalez before. I mean, for people who don't know, I did a record with him last year called Room 29. I'm not advertising it, honestly. But Yeah, so I'd heard about him, but I really got into him from his solo piano records, and this one's great. I mean, I've only had a chance to listen to it a couple of times, but it's he's kind of expanding it. This time he takes a bit more liberties with you've not always got such a kind of delineated time signature or something. The looser the kind of rhythmic thing of the songs, and he's just got a kind of you always recognise his playing. He's got, which is something that I find really fascinating, because you kind of think of a piano. I'm looking at a piano in this room now, actually. So it's just got keys, and you hit them like softer or louder. But I mean, it's basically that's the piano, and how a person can actually make a piano sound individual to them, especially when they're using different instruments all the time. Because like when we were touring Room 29, which I'm not advertising, but pianists don't travel with their instrument because it's massive. You can't travel with a big grand piano.
Right,
so
of course.
We would turn up at these different concert halls, and some would have
sound unique to him.
Yeah, some would be a new piano, some would be like an old kind of beat up piano.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he did have certain specifications, but he would always make it sound his way.
Mm-hmm.
So that to me is kind of magical. Because you can't, you're just touching a keyboard. I mean, with a guitar, you can see how somebody could have a different sound, because you can actually damp the strings, or
touch them a certain type of way,
or the way you bend it,
yes,
or whatever. You can't bend the strings on a piano, you know what I mean, unless you're really strong.
Yeah, you have to be very, very strong. I'm trying to think of a pianist that really you would hear and know right away that that's so and so.
Well, I think Gonzalo's got this kind of. It's almost like a muted quality to the sound of it,
mm-hmm.
which makes it sound already old in some way. But it's not. I mean, he's making the music now, and a lot of his references, especially his rhythmic references, are taken from like hip hop records, because he's crazy. That's his favourite kind of music to listen to.
Where's he from?
He's from Canada.
From Canada, okay.
Yeah.
Where in Canada? I put you on the spot there.
Montreal, I think.
Montreal, okay.
Yeah, pretty sure.
I need to listen to the Room 29 record. I've not.
If I had a copy, I would have brought it for you.
That's okay.
Then I was up in West Yorkshire last weekend DJing, and on my way there I called in a book dealer's house. I did say book dealer, not a drug dealer's house. And he also had a small quantity of records that he was selling as well. And I bought
quantity of records.
Yeah, I bought a spoken word record, the poet Ted Hughes reading a kind of poem sequence called Crow. And I haven't listened to it all yet, but it's basically just... It's quite an interesting experience just to listen to someone read poems for 20 minutes,
Yep.
And he's got quite a good voice. He's from West Yorkshire, and I'm from South Yorkshire, so the dialect is similar, but he's got a kind of thicker version of it. It's more primal, and a lot of his poems have got very kind of earthy, primal imagery, especially this crow one, which is, I don't really understand it because it's poetry, and also but I mean I think that's what I like about poetry, in that it's like treating language as music. You don't. As soon as I realised that you don't have to understand poetry first time, second time, even the third time you hear it, if you kind of listen to the words more musically, and just try and appreciate the effect they have as a sequence as you listen to them, then you can just relax. And kind of perversely, then you usually find that you understand it more as well. Or it'll come back to you like a day later. And
you ever listen to the Shel Silverstein records?
I've got a Shel Silverstein record.
There's some where he's reading poetry,
and
no music. I mean, obviously he wrote great songs, but there's some great, I don't know if you have any of those, like Where the Sidewalk Ends, and there's some side note, but those are really great. I guess maybe there's some weird sound effects because they're like children's tales, but that's like a late night. We're trying to get the kids to sleep. Put that record on sometimes. But
yeah, I wouldn't put Ted Hughes on to put somebody to sleep because this crow character is really scary. It's kind of like all the kind of ugly blackness of the world is kind of concentrated into this crow figure.
That would probably be bad at my house.
Not good.
8 or 9 o'clock.
You don't want to put kids to sleep with that idea in the mind.
Shel Silverstein can be a little scary at times too. This is a great list. I'm going to be looking all these up.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll carry on.
Yeah, please. Yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah.
So then when I got to the DJ thing, I was DJing with a guy called Andy Votel who's got I know he's got at least one label, Finders Keepers. You probably know that label.
Yeah, great label. Yeah.
So we were kind of DJing back to back for about 6 hours. So he played some good stuff, but unfortunately, most of the stuff that he plays is like Yugoslavian or whatever. So and are on these labels that you've never heard of.
Yep.
So I can't really tell you much about that. But one record that I've been playing a lot when I've been DJing is Gladys Knight and the Pips, Borgie Borgie. Do you know that one?
No.
Oh, that's a good one. Oh. Well, that's good because it's like it's kind of like a politically aware disco song, but a proper disco song.
Yeah,
so it's not like Gang of Four, where Gang of Four would take disco and make it into like agit-prop kind of thing, which I also think is great.
Yep.
But this Borgie Borgie is just... well, the chorus is everybody wants to be Borgie Borgie, super bourgeoisie. So just basically about people wanting status symbols and stuff like this.
I have to look that up. I've never
It's
heard
good.
that.
Have a listen. But it's a proper... It's just a really good disco song as well. You know, not trying to be alternative at all. I don't know how... I wouldn't know how it got written. It doesn't really seem to fit, you know, with disco. But so I really enjoyed listening and dancing to that. Then I had a friend came round to my apartment in Paris the other night. We were supposed to be watching the football because the World Cup's on at the moment.
Yep.
Soccer, as you guys would call it. But
well said.
the game was pretty boring, so I started playing him some records.
You're talking about the England-Belgium game, or no?
That was dull.
It was boring.
Yeah, that was the one we were supposedly watching, but we lost it.
You were eating very good Thai food at the time, though.
Yeah, well, that's
yes.
Yeah. So for some reason, the first thing I played in was a Randy Newman song called Cowboy. I think maybe we'd been talking about the film Midnight Cowboy. And somebody once told me that song, the Randy Newman song Cowboy, was originally written for Midnight Cowboy, but never ended up on the soundtrack. And I can kind of believe it because the musical part of it is very similar to one of the themes in Midnight Cowboy. I think it's a track called Joe Buck Rides Again or something.
That's a great tune. I love that.
But that Randy Newman song has become a favourite of mine because it's quite a abstract-y kind of song.
What album is that from? Do you know?
It's the first one, first solo album we did. Well, I've got some kind of cheap price re-edition of it, which I don't think is the original artwork.
I love Good Old Boys, Randy Newman. That's worth picking up. That's a song called Guilty. It's like I took some cocaine, I drank too much alcohol and made my wife mad or something, but it's like all about like he's kind of more living in this character of the South and a lot dealing with like racism and and kind of prohibition and like crazy New Orleans characters. It's like not far after the one you mentioned, maybe 73 or 75. But
because the friend who was with me was like, I guess he just really knew Randy Newman from later things like Toy Story.
Yeah.
Where he's kind of settled into that kind of piano man thing. But the thing that's nice about that song is it's kind of, maybe there is a piano on it, I don't know, but the main backing is like an orchestra, and it's very kind of spacious, and his voice is pretty crazy. In fact, the friend said it reminded him of Tom Waits in a way. It's more like that kind of idea.
That's great.
Then I've been playing the Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me soundtrack, which I don't like that film. I recently watched the whole of the original Twin Peaks series with my son. I don't know how that started, but it was a good thing to watch with your adolescent son.
What do you think of it?
Yeah, he liked it.
Yeah.
So it kind of got me back into the world of Twin Peaks, and then I'd never seen the film Fire Walk with Me, but I saw the soundtrack cheap in a record store and got it, and it's really great.
Yeah, I love those scores are amazing. Yeah.
But that one in particular is like the main theme. Actually, that's why I got it right. Now I remember. There was a concert here in London of film music, and they played that, and I'd not really heard it before. And it was like I could feel myself kind of drifting off into some kind of transcendental state. You know, it really. And it's weird because it's not like, you think of meditative music as being like there's a sitar somewhere and there's probably something droning away. There's been a lot of kind of, there's almost cliches of how you would do it. But whereas this theme is more like the kind of, they're channeling all that kind of 50s smooth jazz kind of idea.
Right.
But somehow, there's this kind of muted trumpet kind of tootling away, but then there's this really thick kind of string line, and it just goes on, and it just has the same effect. It really kind of, you start to kind of like go off into some kind of trance.
That's nice.
It's really good.
I haven't seen the film in a long time, but yeah, I love that score.
I'm coming to the end now. I'll finish with this is coming back to newness again, I suppose. Last time I was in LA, which was back in February, and I ended up doing a bit of DJing at the Ace Hotel on the roof, and I had quite a good laugh. And somebody gave me a record whilst I was doing that. And I think the artist is Holy Shit.
I know the name,
or is it
never
Holy...
heard them.
Yeah, okay, he gave me 2 records and there's an album, and unfortunately I can't remember the name of the album. It's got a cover, I think it's the guy who's in the band. I think it's really just one guy, I don't think it's really a band. There's a picture of him by some kind of, looks like it could be a Frank Gehry house or at night, or something like that. That's the best description I can give you. But there's a cover version of a Felt song on there, and I think it's called "The Final Resting of the Ark," and that's really good. It's like, I guess maybe it's something to do with my mind at the moment, but I find I like the stuff that I'm liking to listen to is like where it seems like the song's semi-dissolved or in a state of flux or something, and yet somehow it hangs together. And this is like it's got kind of a 4/4 drum beat, like a bass drum going, but then it's kind of again a bit abstract, and some parts of it sound very home recorded, and other parts are a bit more polished. So you can't really situate. It's hard to kind of get your bearings within the song. And I didn't know it was a Felt cover until I checked the record credits and stuff.
Are you a fan of Felt?
Well, it made me think. I know Lawrence a bit. I haven't seen him for a while, but I only really got to know him after Felt had finished, when he was doing the Denim thing, because Denim supported Pulp when back in the mid-90s when we were playing kind of those arenas and things. We took him and also Edwin Collins came along on the tour to open up, and
the great Bill.
Yeah, it was all right. Yeah, and he was a guest on the Sunday service maybe 2 times, and brought in some amazing records.
Yeah,
I mean, and now if you talk about Sunday with an amazing record collection, he is, and he's so obsessive about it. So when he came in, like, none of the records were in the sleeves because he didn't want the sleeves to get damaged. He thought maybe in the journey from his house to the studio they might get knocked or something.
Yeah.
So it was kind of frustrating for me because I'm wanting to like find out some information about these amazing records he's playing, but it's just the record in the paper sleeve, then in a plastic sleeve. So, but then he knows all about the records as well, and then he was telling me about a place you could take your records somewhere in Soho and get them cleaned, like in a basement of some shop, and you could take them there and the guy would charge you 50p a time and you could get them clean, and then they would sound like they'd just been made the day before. So he's really, really obsessive and very knowledgeable about
a few years
music.
back I met him out here, and he had this great story, I feel like he told it to me, of if you went to his house and wanted to look at his records, he made you put plastic rubber gloves on.
I can totally believe it.
He just really...
I wouldn't be surprised if you had to put some kind of gas mask on so you didn't breathe on them or something.
Body condom. He's really nice to see those records being reissued and people.
Yeah, well, it made, like this cover. It made me feel like I've heard the odd felt song, but I'm not in any way knowledgeable about it. So I really feel like I should go back and listen to that.
I don't know all the records either. I think I have a few, but I think there's 10 records, right, throughout the whole 80s.
It was prolific,
Yeah, very prolific. And I heard the other day the recent Go-Kart Mozart record, which had some cool songs.
Yeah, I mean...
some great lyrics.
He's always great lyrically.
Yeah.
I mean, he's been doing Go-Kart Mozart for ages now.
Yep.
And some bits of it I like, but I kind of like it to see him do something. What can I say? Not quite as bubblegum, I suppose. I know. I think I really respect what he's doing, because it's like no one else would go so deep into that throwaway ephemeral thing.
Yeah, he's unique.
Yeah,
he's really
I totally respect what he's doing, but he could move off it.
Yeah, he might eventually, but he seems pretty focused on it.
Yeah.
Well, it's a great list. Is that keep going?
That's it. No, that's it. I've finished now.
Yeah, really pleasure to have you on. I'm going to look all that stuff up and listen to it. That's great.
Oh yeah, well do.
Yeah, I will.
Yeah,
I did most of that, if not all. I did not had not heard. So.
Actually, no. There's one more.
Oh, yeah, go for it, please.
There's one more.
Yeah.
Do you know that guy Benjamin Clementine or Clementine?
No, I don't think so.
He's living in LA now.
Okay.
I think he lives in Topanga Canyon or something.
Okay.
So he did a record last year, I Tell a Fly.
Uh-huh.
He had a record before that got lots of awards and stuff, and then he did this record which is quite experimental. It's mainly kind of piano and drums with a few kind of synthesizing noises.
Mm-hmm.
There's a track on there called God Save the Jungle. And again, it's that thing that it has got a song structure and it has got a melody, but it's not a traditional song structure.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people found this latest record of his kind of a bit too obtuse and hard to get into, and there are some spiky bits on it, but try and have a listen to that one, God Save the Jungle. It's a real, there's an emotion in his singing, so it's not like sometimes you'll get a record and you just think, yeah, those people are trying to provoke a reaction in me and they're trying to put me on edge, and they've managed it, but however I'm never going to listen to it again in my life.
But this seems more genuine.
But this is more like, he's trying to find his own place, and
it's a great title.
Yeah,
God Save the Jungle.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah,
check it.
I will check it. Well, thanks, Jarvis. It was really a pleasure, and you're, like I've maybe said earlier, you're one of those people that really, I just love the show when you were doing it, and just one of those kind of like a record store clerk or an older brother or someone like that, or a great blog or someone's music taste I really trust, and it's nice to hear these things and have you on here, and as the
Yeah, the
when
police are coming to get me now.
Come and take us away.
This is the final words you'll ever hear from me.
Well, thanks for being on the Lightning Act podcast. And,
thanks.
It's a pleasure.
Cheers.
All right, bye-bye.
Needing highways, highway. I'm gonna sit right here where I am, and it's easier to stay here. Think I know my way here. I'm gonna lay here, gonna sit here writing a song. Every time one comes along, I'm alright. Gotta be alright.